Yeah, firstly, thank you very much for inviting us. I'm Alain, I work at GSR, it's a crypto trading firm. I'm here with Mathieu, VC, working for very early ventures. And we prepared a small fire chat, and we're going to just bring in two different perspectives. One is probably going to be more focused on investment, the other one is more focusing on the capital market. We already heard the guys talking before us already covered a lot of topics. So if someone of you have an opinion or an objection, whatever we say, think it's bullshit or not, please just stop us and we're going to have an open conversation. Otherwise, you're just going to hear to me and Matthew chatting together. And we're going to chat about the value of DePIN networks. I assume all of you have heard about meme coins. It's very interesting. Their value is mainly driven by community speculation and cultural reference. But when we move over to DePIN, it's actually a bit more easier because it's actually utility based and it's investing in decentralized infrastructure. It makes life also a bit easier because if you work in our space, assume most of you do, you often get confronted, everything is just like Fugazi. There's nothing behind it. I think we can talk about that kind of reason, but DePIN is actually, hopefully, the case that proves other people wrong. So, do you want to start with telling people what DePIN is?
Sure, I mean, you've heard for 40 minutes about a specific example. I guess on a high level, we all know decentralized physical infra. We somehow use tokens to build these networks. That's like the very high level. And then what I think is interesting is that it's actually a pretty broad category, right? So on the one hand side, we have these. So I'm thinking in different terms. So on the one hand side, like hardware networks, which are being incentivized by tokens. Those are mostly what people think about when thinking about DePIN. But then, you can also incentivize more like machine-like networks. So what's the difference between machine and hardware? It's also hardware, but like a bit more complex systems than just CPUs, GPUs, hard drives. I'm thinking, for example, of cars like Demo. You can add your car to the network, sell the car data, and then you get some token. Hopefully, it will be worth something in the future. And also humans, like the coordination of human networks. We are also physical, so I think it makes sense that these are also DePINs. And first, DePINs are now being built to coordinate humans for example, competitors to something like a DoorDash. So how to deliver physical goods to people and solve like the last mile problem. Or I'd consider something like Autonolas or Olas, which we've invested in. Also in that category, it's like coordinating humans to build AI agents and trade them between each other, use them in coordination. And then ultimately you also have an infra layer for all these things, right? Many of them actually don't really run on the blockchain. There's like a token on the blockchain and that's it. But people try to make the blockchain angle bigger over time, and so we have companies like Peak or IoTeX, building basically new L1s for that. So I think that's the one thing I can add. It's pretty broad, and even within the category which we think we know, hardware, right? So okay, there's storage, compute, simple, Bitcoin, etc., compute, Acurast, and all these GPU things for AI. And then there's network, Helium, and Wi-Fi networks, or 00. But even beyond that, there's a lot like...
Sorry to interrupt you. If we go back to Helium, it's basically wireless. I mean, would you really say something completely new, or is it just like a cheap arbitrage? Because you're basically piggy banking on an already existing infrastructure that essentially gets resold into the market.
Yeah, so we are going into why can these networks actually deliver value, right?
Yes.
And I think there's, like the cost base is very different. And one thing is like regulatory arbitrage, which maybe you're referring to.
Yes.
If I'm Swisscom and I need to build a 5G antenna, I need to get a lot of permits, and it takes years. And if I'm Matthew and I run a helium node at home, should nobody ask the question. I spent $1,000 or something on the node, and that's it. So 100% there's some regulatory arbitrage in there at the moment, but there's also capex arbitrage, right? Swisscom needs to pay for the antenna. I pay for the node and not the helium network. But there, so that again, long term, I'm not sure how that makes sense. But definitely something that I can use it, like I can use my home. Swisscom needs to pay me rent if they want to build the antenna on my house. I command a lot of rent. And if I build my little helium node, it's just a fun project, the rent comes for free. So those are kind of like the key levers: capex, rent, and then these legal requirements. Yeah.
Would you say that when we go back to the regulatory arbitrage, I mean, Swisscom is probably not going to care until a certain market share of the DePIN infrastructure?
Next 5 years, huh?
Yeah, next 5 years. But at one point, it's like with everything, it's like you have an annoying startup or a new idea coming up, nobody cares, and then it gets to a certain level and people start to care. Would you say that's introducing something like an artificial market cap, where you basically, the DePIN network gets to a certain value, basically the original infrastructure provider who gets piggybacked on will start to act, and there's going to be some kind of sharing between them, or they're going to crush them, or they're just going to outcompete them? Or?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's classic innovator's dilemma, right? I mean, you're too small and too slowly growing and so on until you achieve a certain level, then you become relevant, but you've already acquired such high speed that then the incumbent Swisscom here cannot just easily crush you anymore. So what we expect at very early ventures is that, okay, as soon as this stuff becomes a little bit bigger, and let's say helium doesn't serve 0.1% of mobile phone plans in the US, but more like 5%, then people are going to like notice and think about, do we want that, and do we want to increase the pressure regulatory-wise on them? And for sure the pressure will increase. But again, at the moment, helium can serve a no-limit data plan across the whole US at $20, right? And Verizon or so is at $70, $80, $90. So even if you double that, it's still a lot cheaper. And I don't think from the 3 points that I mentioned, capex, rent, reg arbitrage, that reg arbitrage is like so big that it will 3x the price. Because there are very good reasons why you should regulate a small helium node that somebody puts up on their own property in a different type than like a huge 5G antenna, right?
Completely agree. I'm just thinking there could be like some cap that gets in. And what's your take on, you mentioned like the cost, 20 versus 70. I think people like free stuff or like cheap stuff. Do you think that's going to be attracting more people to actually the DePIN like infrastructure or apps building on that, compared to like, let's say, more the crypto ideological stuff like censorship resistant, community based?
Yeah, 100%. At our fund, we are believers in like building stuff decentralized enough to achieve a goal, and that's usually like composability between different apps. That's why we want some level of censorship resistance. We don't want like nation-state censorship resistance, but to a level that it's not just Mark at Facebook saying, I don't want games on my platform anymore, boom, you're gone. And I think at that level we are in crypto, and people care about that, and rightfully so. But when you buy a storage or so, the cost is also very important. So we have a portfolio company, it's called Impossible Cloud. They do storage and compute, and so they sell on two things. So they sell into German SMEs. So they don't care at all, or they hate actually if like blockchain is involved. So they don't want that. But they see that can buy storage cheaper than at AWS, and it's only in Europe. And yeah, then it's like somehow decentralized, and it's not one guy deciding how the price should be, and it doesn't like just 2x over 6 months. And that's for sure also a relevant consideration. But again, it is linked to price, right? Decentralization not just per se, but connected to their experience that currently they have a huge dependency on 2, maybe 3 companies. Yeah.
If they don't care about blockchain, do you think they care about the token? I mean, we heard like the people talking before us. I mean, the moment you use blockchain as a token and reward as an incentive mechanism, it's very smart to actually bootstrap. But doesn't it introduce like a bit like a dilemma? On one side you have, let's say, the business model you need to deal with, which is on the network. But on the other side you actually have like a second prize which captures, at least at the moment, most of the mind space of people, like the token price, which gives you an easy way to bootstrap, but it also like I would say double-sided sword, because just from a trading side you see a lot of people just gaming the distribution mechanism. You have the one side, the builder that wants to build, to have a long-term vision, and it seems there's like no clear token model yet or way to approach that. So often what they say before, it's like people go in somewhere, they farm a lot, they dump it, they walk away, almost putting a very good idea on a very good infrastructure at risk to have a long-term success.
Yeah, I think you need to distinguish a bit between different user groups, right? In the impossible cloud argument, so the demand comes from these SMEs, and they don't want to see a token at all and not think about it, and they don't game it, they just pay. In the future they will hopefully pay in USDC, so far they don't even do that, it's just like a normal thing. And then on the supply side you have everything that you described, right? And with Ethereum and how you buy your data plan, it's kind of the same thing, right? On the supply side, or wherever you really incentivize with a token, yes, everything you said is true, right? It's very difficult. How do you play that game, right? How do you prohibit the token pumping to a value which just doesn't make any sense at all? And so then people that earn that, like dumping it again, it's kind of tough. You need long-term aligned supporters of your project. I think if they actually invest capex and their heart into setting up a node and running that and debugging that and so on, you have a lot more long-term supporters than if people buy on Legion in a pre-token launch round.
Yeah, probably agree with the hard part. I think the more capex you invest, the faster you want your money back. So you're probably going to dump faster. But that could be the capitalist in me. Because you still need to recoup the cost.
Yeah, but what's your investment horizon, right? I mean, ultimately it doesn't really depend on how large is the dollar amount, but more how long do I need to run my Helium node until it is back. If it takes 18 months, then you just attract different kind of people than if it's 2 weeks. And as soon as it's a relevant amount that you need to spend on the hardware, it's probably more than 18 months than the 2 weeks, right? And then as soon as you have your capex back and you actually sold that amount of tokens, like it probably cost you quite a bit to get that thing running, so why not keep running it? And then yeah, whether you dump more or not, different question.
Do you see a potential danger in like vampire attacks? Let's say you have the capex investment, you farm the tokens, someone comes up with a new protocol, copy-pasting the other one, you already have the infrastructure. Do you have an incentive to jump around? Is that some thinking we already see in that space, or are people not yet that much into the financial engineering?
Yeah, 100% it's something you could try. And I haven't seen a project pitch me yet. We're going to tech helium, you know, the hardware is out there, boom, we just do some token incentive. I think probably, to be honest, at the moment, that would be 100% possible by a credible team, because so I haven't thought this through, but I think the main mode is the supply side, right? If you helium, you have ARR, you have income, and that's really underpinning the value of your token. Getting that is your mode. Getting the normal users on your data plan is your mode. And for a new token, yeah, that's very hard to get, because these thread people or the SMEs in the Impossible Cloud case, you can't just go to them and say, hey, here's a token, you will make 1,000% APR, now come and also become our demand side, right? That's very hard. But at the moment, if you look at DePINs, they all have like 2 million ARR, and that's like top 10, or 4 million or so, or like taking away all the AI stuff. And so if you don't have that mode, I think it will totally work. So,
no, I was just saying let's do the vampire thing.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, we just got to cut off on the time. I was like, what's your prediction for the next? You already gave it out.
You already gave it, yeah. But another prediction besides just one of these becoming really relevant over the next 5 years is we will see the same model applied just in a plethora of use cases. So we see this now in healthcare, right? In energy, in cars, anywhere that you have high capex for physical devices, or you have like a landscape of different physical devices that are not really playing well together, like and producing data. That's basically the healthcare case or the car case. People will spin up these networks so that user can monetize whatever they are already producing. And which ones of these will actually work, I don't know. Like when I see the pictures of these founders at pre-seed, it's very ambitious what they want to achieve, and it's not based on a lot of data. But some small fraction of those, I think, will actually succeed. But it's very hard for me to tell which ones.
Probably think energy and healthcare is very interesting. On one side, basically, there's a lot of healthcare data that's available, but very siloed. I think it will be very interesting. There's a network to actually make that accessible in the broadband, and just see when you have like all the brain power in the world, access to data, what kind of problem on the healthcare side we can solve. And I think another very interesting case, but that's probably more stopped on the regulatory side, is everything with energy. Like everybody that owns a house, everybody has something, there's so much energy that is just wasted and somehow locked. I'm bullish for this too, and I think in the next 5 to 10 years we're going to see very interesting stuff within that vertical.
There's actually a really interesting parallel between the whole energy use case and also what helium does. So helium is not only in this crypto native world, right? So they partnered with Deutsche Telekom to provide service across the US on the one hand side. But then the other telcos actually, if they have large traffic, they offload that to the helium network. It's a bit unclear whether they really go B2C to the end consumer and sell these data plans, or is actually their business more like load balancing the network. And in the energy case, what they are doing is just that, it's load balancing the network, right? And so there I'm pulled in, yeah, it will happen for sure. Especially with all the renewables coming up, etc. It's becoming more and more important. Now, whether it needs to happen via a blockchain case or not, that I'm a bit less sure. I know a lot of companies are working on that just without token incentives, and some of them have early success. TBD.